Finally, the Lions get some good news on the injury front, and we got Dave Birkett.
You are Locked On Lions, your daily Detroit Lions podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, here we go, everybody. It's a Tuesday edition of Locked On Lions right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today is Tuesday, January 7th into Wednesday, January 8th. Thank you for making us your first listen and checking us out wherever you get your podcast. Hello to our everydayers out there that watch and listen to the pod daily. We appreciate you guys big time. The legendary David Birkett, Free Press beat writer to the Stars and the author of this very book right here, The Detroit Lions, An Illustrated Timeline. Get your books now at Reedy Press, R-E-E-D-Y, Reedy Press. Dave Birkett will join us momentarily as well on the podcast. Thanks for being with us on this Tuesday. Ross Tucker, NFL analyst on CBS, Ross Tucker podcast, going to join us on Thursday as well. Today's show brought to you by FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. All right, I mentioned it before. We got Dave coming up. We're going to talk to him. Big news today. Couple of items. Number one, David Montgomery is going to be back for the first playoff game. You heard me correctly. We thought it was an MCL sprain. He got 3 different opinions on it. Dan Campbell today saying David Montgomery will be back, will return, and is going to play likely going to be back for the first playoff game coming up at Ford Field next weekend against either the Rams, the Vikings, the Commanders, or the Packers. So that's huge news. Lions also dodged a bullet, it sounds like, with Terrion Arnold and what they're calling a foot contusion. Kevin Zeitler's hamstring. Also sounds like those guys are going to be okay. So the Lions have had so many issues injury-wise, yet it sounds like they're dodging a bullet with those 3 guys, and they'll be ready for the first playoff game. Not so much on Aiden Hutchinson, Derek Barnes, or Carlton Davis. It sounds like for sure Barnes and Davis are not going to return for the playoffs at all. As far as Aiden Hutchinson goes, Dan Campbell said today, while Hutchinson's been working hard, Hutchinson's been talking about coming back from the Super Bowl, it's still probably unlikely that he would be back in time to play in the Super Bowl. But the Lions first have to get there. Remember, Aiden Hutchinson shattered his leg, broke his fibula and tibia. And you love the grit. You love the fact that the kid wants to come back and is working hard to return. But Dan Campbell didn't really 100% squash it today, but did kind of say that you can't really count on something like that. So that's, look, the Lions have had such bad news when it's come to injuries all year, especially on the defense. To get at least, some good. The Terrion Arnold injury, you get carted off the field on Sunday night against the Vikings, and you're thinking there's no way he's going to play for a few weeks. All right. Is it an Achilles? Is it a broken foot? Is it a high ankle sprain? Just for it to be a foot contusion. And it sounds like he'd be ready to go in a couple weeks when the Lions play their next playoff game, or their first playoff game, but their next game would be just fantastic news. The Lions need all the healthy bodies they can get. And look, the rookies played very well. All right. Maybe he doesn't grade out like some others. Maybe he doesn't had as great a year as like the Eagles rookie corners or Wiggins with the Ravens. All right. But Terrion Arnold is stuck in there. He's played hard, and he hasn't embarrassed himself. He started off the year slow. We know about all the pass interference flags, but all in all, I think he's done very, very well. Raiders job opened today. Antonio Pierce, after a 4-13 start or 4-13 season, he's been fired after 1 year. So the Raider job is open. No word yet on who they're going to look at. If you're Ben Johnson, do you even consider Las Vegas? Because they don't really have a quarterback. All right. Ben Johnson, is going to talk to Jacksonville because they've got Trevor Lawrence. He's going to talk to the Bears because they have Caleb Williams. Ben Johnson's going to talk to the Patriots. They've got Drake May. And the interview window sounds like Thursday to Saturday is when the Lions are going to give Ben Johnson and Aaron Glenn opportunities to meet with teams virtually and conduct head coaching interviews. Dan Campbell said today, if Aaron Glenn is not a head coach next year, there's something wrong because he deserves it in a big way. And you know how Dan feels about Dan. You know how Dan feels about Ben Johnson as well. To me, I heard Kevin Warren speaking today. Where's the quote? This is Kevin Warren, the Bears president, when asked about Ryan Poles, the GM, who is still there. Kevin Warren was asked if he's committed to Ryan Poles, the GM. Quote, when we say long-term, a year is a lifetime. This is why the Bears are the Bears. This is why they lose every year. This is why they're picking high in the draft every year. I've said it 1,000 times. I'll say it 1,001. I don't know why Ben Johnson would go to Chicago. I just don't see it. All right, Dave Birkett going to join us coming up next right here on Locked On Lions. It's a Tuesday edition. And Locked On Lions are brought to you by PrizePicks. It's playoff time, and if you're like me, you want to make the most of these final weeks of football action. That's where PrizePicks comes in. Daily fantasy that is different and so much fun. If you love football and want a chance to win real money while watching the games, PrizePicks is the place for you. It's the best way to turn your sports opinions into cash with daily fantasy player projections. With PrizePicks, you simply pick more or less on player stats like total passing yards or rushing touchdowns for a shot to win up to 1,000 times your money. You can make your picks in less than 60 seconds, and whether you're looking for a flex play to boost your payout or you want to win a cash out quickly, PrizePicks has you covered. And with over 10 million members and billions in winnings, it's clear that people are loving this platform. What about this weekend? Saquon Barkley of the Eagles against the Packers. You want to bet on him scoring more than one touchdown? It's easy to do. Seriously. You can get paid in as little as 15 minutes if your picks hit. Here's a special offer for Locked On NFL listeners here. Download the app today. Use the code Locked On NFL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's PrizePicks. Run your game. All right, let's bring him in, folks, here on a Tuesday edition of Locked On Lions. Dave Birkett, Lions beat writer, longtime beat writer at the Free Press, and now author of the Detroit Lions, an illustrated timeline. Look at you, Dave. You're a big author now. Congrats.
I appreciate that, man. That's it was a little project I undertook this offseason, and turned out it was a pretty timely one to do, I guess, with the team as good as it is. Huh?
Well, I was telling you off air, I really like the book. It's massive, but it's very readable. And what made, you've been covering the team how many years now? What made you want to do this?
I mean, honestly, they came to me to do it. It was not, my brainchild. They had asked me a few years ago, the publishing house, Reedy Press, and it just didn't quite fit with kind of what I had going on at the time. And, they came back again this offseason in February and asked me if I wanted to do it, this time around. I figured it was kind of now or never. So, spent a month and a half or so knocking it out, and, glad I did. It's been great. I mean, not just the reception about the book, but, I've been go on the road and do some book signings at some of the Lions road games, and just to meet with a lot of the Lions fan groups in some of these away cities. It's been pretty eye-opening. You know as well as I do how great this fan base is and how well they travel, and to meet up with some of these fans in some of these road cities has been really good to kind of get a glimpse of what life is like for those people and how much they love their team.
You've covered this team a long time. Can you believe this? I mean, home field advantage. I just said on the show last night, like they won 15 football games, 15,
yeah.
Like the Lions, just stop and take it all in. Right.
I mean, and that's what 9 teams in history have done that now. I think it is. I could be
Amazing.
A little wrong on my math there, but no, it's, I mean, look, I think we saw this come in the last couple of years, just the way the Lions were building, but maybe not to this extent. To win 15 games, that is a rare feat in the NFL, and to do it with the amount of injuries they've had, all the things they've sort of had to overcome this year. It's a credit to Dan Campbell, Brad Holmes. It's a credit to the entire roster that they put together, that they really have, in my opinion, the best talent, most talented roster in the NFL, and it doesn't always, carry over on the field. We don't always see it in the record, but I think that's been the case this year.
What was Sunday night like for you being up there in the press box? Obviously you sat through some tough ones. You sat through some really good ones, but just as somebody that is covered football and enjoys it, what was that like for you?
Yeah, it was, it was, kind of surreal, I guess. Cause like you said, of all the, the seasons I've covered this team, my first full season covering this team was 2008. I was at the Oakland Press then, but that was the winless season, and I covered a little bit of John L. Smith at Michigan State before that, and Rich Rodriguez for a season after that. And, even some of the Lions years, I remember some of the Lions people, like the 2014 season, Lions had a pretty good year that year. They had a really good defense, but it just never, they didn't dominate like they did this year. It never quite felt like they were this good or they were this much of a Super Bowl contender. And I remember, getting some grief from some people in the organization, like, you're not giving us full credit for what we're doing. And I think this is kind of what you always wanted, if you were rooting for this team or even a reporter covering this team, to be like, this is the type of team that can win it all. And I don't think we've seen that from many Lions teams.
We both know some of those people that was giving you grief. We can laugh now, David. Bye week. What, how vital is it for this team, just how banged up they are, and because they just haven't had one since early October?
Yeah, no, it's important. It'll look. Don't know exactly what Terrion Arnold's status is, but Dan Campbell said his X-rays were negative, and he told me after the game, he expects to be able to play in the Lions' first playoff game. So maybe having that bye week helps him. David Montgomery should be back coming out of the bye, so that's another body that they get back. Look, if I was the Lions, I'd probably give a whole lot of carries to Jahmyr Gibbs going forward, but that was a really good running back tandem they had there before the injury, so it helps. And there's some other. Look, it can't hurt to have that extra week, especially having to play week 18 and play a pretty physical game against the Vikings. Some of these other teams, the Eagles, the Chiefs in the AFC, they got to rest the Bills. They got to rest some of their starters. And so as you look forward to really the last month here and the push that teams have to make in order to get to the Super Bowl, it's a good thing to have that extra, week off for the body for some of these guys that have put it all on the line here for 18 weeks.
Dave Birkett with us, of course, Dave from the Free Press and author of the Detroit Lions, an illustrated timeline. We'll get into the book a little bit more and how everybody can get it momentarily. The job Dan Campbell has done, you've obviously covered a wide variety of coaches. Some were good to you, some were not, and everything else. Dan Campbell, it's got to be a dream to cover a guy like that, right?
He fills up a quote book, a notebook, every day. Look, the thing I think we like as reporters is probably a lot of what, the players and the people in the organization like, and that's, that he's, honest and forthright, and kind of what you see is what you get. He doesn't BS you when he's up at the microphone. He tells you something if he knows it or if he wants to. He doesn't share state secrets necessarily, but and he does it with a passion and with an energy, and that makes for great writing and reporting. There's some color that you can bring to life when you're covering this team, and so there's one of my friends, another NFL writer, he said, man, for all you've been through, he said, what if you never have to go through a coaching search again? He called me this summer and we were talking about it, and I said, wow, I started thinking about that, like, man, that's something after all the different coaches we've seen, and that's really the worst part of the job, both from a personal level and having to see what that does to the people going through it. So I don't think anyone here is complaining about not just Dan, but the people that he's brought along with him in the locker room and on the coaching staff to cover as well.
What do you think about the whole transparency thing? Because I think as readers, and we all read you, and please subscribe to the Free Press if you're not getting Dave's stuff, but you don't have to walk out of a presser going, all right, I got to go to my sources. I got to find the player's agent about an injury, because Dan will flat out say, yeah, we think he's got an MCL and it's going to be a while. Like, does it just make it easier for you? And are we at the point now where, like you said before, state secrets, it's just stupid?
Yeah, no, and that's really what it is. look, you see these doctors on social media that like 95% of the time are right in their diagnosis. Like NFL teams know what's going on. They watch a game and they've got their advanced scouts, and they have a pretty good read on teams' injuries. And I think some of the some of the lengths that some of the previous administrations went to hide some of these things was just kind of silly. And so it just, again, like, Dan is pretty upfront about things, and sometimes there are things that he doesn't want to say, or he doesn't know, or he's waiting on answers, and we can all respect that, and we understand. But I do think giving a little something, not just for us, but those are things that I think endear him to fans too, or make the fans feel more a part of this team, right? When they can live and die and they know what's going on with their guys, and oh my goodness, I'm gonna have to wait to see what happens till Friday if David Montgomery's coming back, or is Alex Anzalone, is he coming back from this fractured form? Well, it's 6 to 8 weeks. Let me do the math in my head. Like, I think everything that he's done, the way he's handled the media, the way he's approached all of this, has really helped build sort of this, this culture that we're around from a fan standpoint too.
What's your best guess on Ben Johnson and Aaron Glenn? Obviously, they can go through virtual interviews this week, but if you had to, I mean, I said yesterday, I think they're both going to be gone. I mean, these guys are deserving of opportunities, but do you get a read on where they might be headed?
Yeah, no, I mean, the one thing that could hold them back is there's only, 5 jobs open right now. And,
yep.
That's not a lot, so, you throw Mike Vrabel in the mix, and, maybe Brian Flores gets a job. And, I think there's some other candidates that may be right for certain teams. But look, I'm with you. I think Aaron Glenn, it's not just about the job he did against the Vikings, but a lot of teams, look, the Lions are a blueprint for a lot of teams right now, right? Teams want that leader of men in charge. And Aaron Glenn sort of oozes that. He's a former player. He played a long time in the league. He's a guy that players respect. He can be he can be hard on guys, but also love them. And so I do think that, he will be appealing to some of these teams on the market. The New Orleans Saints are the natural connection, I guess. He was the runner up there a few years ago when they hired Dennis Allen. Obviously was there for a long time as an assistant. He had interviewed with the Jets before. That's another organization he has ties to. The Bears, I would think, maybe like a dark horse candidate if Ben Johnson doesn't want that job or doesn't get that job. So I think Aaron Glenn, will be in the mix for a couple jobs this offseason. Ben's a little bit different. Maybe not. Maybe doesn't feel the urge to take a job, but I do think he wants one, and I think he came back for this season knowing this was a year that the Lions could win it all, and he's ready for his own room, his own team. And so, look, the Patriots, that's an intriguing one to me for him, because you look at what they've done. Obviously for the last couple of decades. I mean, won a lot of titles with Bill Belichick, obviously with Tom Brady at quarterback. Then they had another defensive coach in Gerard Mayo this year who didn't work out. Well, they've got a young quarterback who's played pretty good as a rookie. They've got a whole lot of cap space. They got a high draft pick, an ownership group that's considered pretty good. So, maybe that's one. If Ben is truly in the mix, if that's not a Mike Vrabel job, I could see that one being intriguing to Ben at the end of the day too.
Talking to Dave Birkett, of course, from the Free Press. Do you buy the theory or believe in the idea that Ben Johnson is not going to align himself with, let's say, the circus in Chicago? I mean, who's running that show? Is it Pace? Is it Kevin Warren, who by the way, has never run football operations? And then the Jacksonville situation, Trent Baalke, everybody thinks is a joke. Why would he go down there when he maybe has to work for a lame duck GM? Do you buy that Ben is that calculated and thinking that way?
Absolutely. I don't even think it's calculated. I think it's just, making an honest assessment of the situations. And the reality in the NFL is that, you only have a limited amount of time to win. And what do you need in place to win? Well, you need good ownership or patient ownership, depending on what sort of situation you're taking over. You need a quarterback. You need the ability to put your staff in place. And look, when you look at Chicago, Caleb Williams might be the guy, and you look at Jacksonville, like, Trevor Lawrence obviously has some intangibles you can work with there. And, but, are you gonna, look what happened, this year with some of those teams where you hire a guy and now the GM's on the hot seat. Chicago being one of them, right? Like, you don't necessarily, if you're Ben and you are that highly thought of where you can, have a lot of say in where you go, you're not just waiting for one of these 32 to open up. I don't know that you rush it if it's a square peg round hole type deal. So I think, if I was Ben, I would probably be going about it the same way. Like, maybe I want a guy that I trust in the GM position, or I want a little more stability there rather than going to a place or going to work for a guy like Ryan Poles or Trent Baalke, who, they've already hired a coach or two, and maybe they seem to be on sort of their last legs as a GM.
Tell me about this weekend, and if you're a Lions fan, who do you hope that Detroit will draw next week?
Yeah, that's a good question. I was thinking about that. I was writing a little sort of just 10 thoughts summing up kind of the week and the where the Lions are now and heading into the playoffs. And obviously it's going to be one of the last four teams, right? I mean, we don't know exactly what the situation is with Jordan Love's injury or Jalen Hurts' injury, I guess, for that matter. But I think I would start at the bottom of the pecking order there. Look, you beat the Packers twice and you beat the Vikings twice, and there were some maybe tense moments in those games. But as difficult as it may be to beat a division team three times, you have the blueprint. So it wouldn't scare me if I was a Lions fan to see my team play either of those teams. The Bucs beat you once, and those were tough games going back to last year. The Rams, obviously, with Matthew Stafford. I don't know that I'd want to see either of those teams in the playoffs. And I know the Bucs are the 3 seed, and they won't play them in round one. But I think I'd rather face Washington with a rookie quarterback or one of those division teams than run it back against Matthew Stafford and the Rams in the divisional round next week.
Dave Birkett, author of the Detroit Lions and Illustrated Timeline. How do people get this book, my friend?
Well, we ran out of books. The publishing house was all out. We sold out online before the holidays. It should be back online at readypress.com right now. Like I said, the second print, waiting for a shipment myself. There's a link at the bottom of my stories, my columns that should be active here as well. But readypress.com is the best place to find it now. Within the next couple of weeks, it should be back in Barnes & Noble and all your local bookstores.
So wait, so people can't get this. So I need to go online and because I know you'll just send me another one. I can make a little. We should split the profits, bro. This is good stuff.
Somebody, there's a guy that bought some from me, and I did a couple like card shows, and one guy I know, a friend of mine, is he's a big time sports card collector, and he texted me last night, and he was like, "Yo, look what this sold for on eBay, or look what it's going for."
Oh my gosh!
So I think, but hey, don't I don't want to take any money out of anybody's pocket if that's what you're hoping for. But they should be back. They should be back here in stores very, very soon, and you can get them. You can pre-order them on readypress.com.
That's REEDY press.com. Dave did a great job with this book. What was the best signing you did? Was there like a great story, or was there a riot at any of these places? Because Lion fans are going crazy right now.
No riot. But no, I did honestly, these, like I was saying, like, going on the road in some of these places, and I talked to like the fan groups, the local fan groups, and I did one in Minnesota. I did one in Dallas. I did one in Houston. And I'm telling you, the bar in Houston, this is where like the Houston fans get together to watch road games. There was probably 1,000 Lions fans at this place, and they weren't all there for me by any means, but they were getting together before the game. And so it was amazing just to talk with some of these people and see that. And then, here locally, been very fortunate. The Post in Plymouth was very kind to me in some of these sports card shows that I've been at. I've had very good reception. So it's great to meet all these Lions fans and sign a few books and hear everybody's story about what the Lions mean to them. That's really what it's about. It's all those pictures sort of take you through the moments that you remember, good and bad, as a fan, and sort of, to hear what they meant to a lot of Lions fans. That's pretty rewarding.
Well, good news is you're going to be home for the next few weeks. You're not going to miss any basketball practices. So
that's right. I'm loaded up with them too. We got baseball starting for my son. We got basketball practice for him and basketball for the girls. So it's a busy time.
I love it. Well, congrats on the book, man. Great to see you as always. Read you every day in freep.com, and keep up the great work. Great to see you.
I appreciate it, man. We'll talk again.
There he is, folks, the great Dave Birkett with us right here on Locked On Lions from the Free Press. And check out his book. Got to tell you about our friends at Gametime, best place to get those tickets. I love going to live events, whether it's sports, music, theater, or comedy. One of my favorite memories was attending a concert a couple of years ago when I got tickets off of Gametime. I took my daughter to see SZA, and it was phenomenal, of course, down at the LCA. Energy, excitement, unforgettable, and I love using the Gametime app. It's made it easier to get tickets for your favorite events. With their new feature, Gametime Picks, this feature filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats. So you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. All right. Got some Pistons tickets recently on Gametime. It's easy. You see the view from your seat. It's phenomenal. The price is right up front, and it's great. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDON NFL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? It's game time. I'm wrapping up this Tuesday edition of a Locked On Lions. Something interesting that Dave Birkett just said in our interview is the next opponent for the Lions. And like we said, Detroit's going to have to win 2 games, and they're going to have to play a really good team. Philadelphia is really good. Our buddy Chris Palme, he loves the Philadelphia Eagles. They've got to face Tampa Bay. The Bucs have given the Lions fits the last few years, including beating them back in week 2. Green Bay is no slouch. The Rams, Minnesota, we know how good they've been all year. 14-win team. All right. Washington, Jaden Daniels is tremendous. He is very, very good. But as far as it goes for who do you want to avoid in round 2, which is kind of the question that I asked Dave, I don't want to see the Rams again. I don't want part 3 Lions-Rams. And I know the game would be at Ford Field and everything else, but the Matt Stafford story, I have bad dreams and visions of here's the Lions' best chance they've ever had to go to the Super Bowl. They're 2 home wins away from going to the Super Bowl. Do you hear me? Hear me loud and clear. Lions, Super Bowl. It's right in front of them. And to have number 9 come back to town, I just want no part of it. Like, please, Washington, please win this weekend or somebody else so that the Lions don't have to see the rain. I don't know. All these teams are good, and I get it. The Lions are at home, but I just want to avoid at all costs the Stafford angle again. That's just how I feel about it. So, all right, we'll do more tomorrow here on Locked On Lions. Thursday, Ross Tucker. Love his podcast, the Ross Tucker Football Podcast, and of course, analyst at CBS Sports and Westwood One. Tuck Spreads. Go to Tuck Spreads on the old Twitter sphere and check out Ross and all of his videos that he does in press boxes with the food. We'll talk to him on Thursday. Have a great rest of your Tuesday, everybody.